What is happening out there, Roto Scouts baseball fans? Welcome to the second day of the season, gang. Or technically the first day. First game was this morning at 6 a.m. Second one, less than 12 hours, about 10 hours from now, 6 a.m. Wednesday morning. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. Hopefully a couple of you guys out there trickle in. Definitely mention this show during the basketball show. We'll see if anybody bothers to show up for it. But this will be out there in the world. If nobody shows up live, it'll be me talking to myself for a minute, and then it'll be out there in the world for people to consume. Good start to the season. Fun game this morning. Definitely enjoyed watching it. I was up basically all night through the morning. Watched that game, then crashed for a couple hours, and then got back up. Put these projections together, put together the NBA, the NHL, everything else that's available up at rotoscouts.com, where access to everything is under $1 a day. Gets you in on MLB, NHL, NBA, NFL when that comes back, season-long baseball, all of it. So make sure you're checking out rotoscouts.com. Hit the like button if you happen to be out there. Subscribe to the channel if you happen to be out there. Let me put a reminder in the Discord that we're live. Live for baseball. See if we can drum up some attendance. But we'll let people trickle in as they find the show. If not, again, we'll just talk it through. Really interesting pitching matchup. We had a good one this morning. Typically in this kind of a scenario, we're going to keep the innings count, the innings pitched light. Justin Steele has gotten a lot of work in the spring, though. So I've kind of got him at a reasonable enough projection. And then Sasaki I've got trimmed a little bit, but just a really, really interesting prospect pitcher. I mean, he's beyond a prospect. He's been pitching in the MLB for a few years. He's one of the most talented pitchers in the world, it sure seems like. We're going to see the proof in the pudding as he makes his MLB debut. We've only gotten a little bit from him in the spring so far. Oops. I put it on the site along with the projections. Sasaki's made 2 spring appearances, went 3 innings, faced 13 hitters, allowed 2 hits, struck out 5, and then went 4 innings, faced 14 hitters, struck out 2, allowed just 1 hit, no runs in either game. Did walk 3 of those hitters so far, but has looked pretty good, but not completely, totally, fully stretched out where I think we're getting him even to 5 innings. I think they probably go a little bit conservative with the treasured signing, with the treasured free agent kid. But his stuff is ridiculous. If we get him for 4 innings, he could easily crack where I've got him projected. Obviously, this is only for the DK slate. No pitching on the FanDuel board. But definitely interesting. The thing is, he's $11,000. He's actually more expensive than Justin Steele, who I just expect to pitch more. But I'll drop a link in the chat so that it's sitting there for people as they watch the show. Welcome to whoever walked in the door. Tell your friends. Sure, more people join us. But a really good article that I linked to from MLB.com, just really breaking down his stuff, because we don't have a lot of like StatCast data or anything on him, but we do have a pretty solid little piece of StatCast from the World Baseball Classic from 2023. He pitched in the semifinals against Mexico, and just his stuff was on display. And it is, again, elite stuff. Potentially some of the best stuff in just coming into the league in all of baseball. His average fastball velocity in that game in the WBC, and again, this is a 1-game sample from the World Baseball Classic, but his average fastball velocity was 100 miles an hour, 100.5. Maxed out at 101.9, 102 essentially. Struck out Randy Arozarena with 101.8. But more to the point, he threw 29 fastballs in that game, and this is all out of that MLB.com article. But he threw 29 fastballs. 26 of those were 100 miles an hour or more. Since 2008, when they started tracking pitches, the list of pitchers who have hit 100 miles an hour or better that many times in a single game is Hunter Green 6 times, Jacob deGrom twice, Nathan Eovaldi once, and Giordano Ventura once. Nobody else has ever done it. He also threw, that means out of that sample size, 90% of the fastballs that he threw in that game were 100 miles an hour or more. That's the highest rate of any measured game of all time. It's Sasaki at 90%, Jordan Hicks in a game from 2022 at 89, Hunter Green in 2022 at 86, Jacob deGrom at 75, and then Hunter Green at 69 in 2021-2022, respectively. So, I mean, we're talking about elite stuff, but it also has ridiculous movement. It's got a lot of horizontal run, and it's what they call a rising fastball, which means, as they explain in the article that you guys can link to there, it doesn't mean that the ball actually physically rises, but it means it drops a lot less than the average fastball, so it's got essentially that effect. It's not dropping to the position based on gravity that one would expect, that a hitter would expect. Combining that with his 80-grade splitter that has literally 29 inches of vertical drop is insane. So he's working at 102 miles an hour with very little drop and a lot of horizontal run on his arm side up here. And then he's working with a 92 mile an hour splitter, which is absurd velocity for a splitter, that has 29 inches of drop from the same arm motion. Potentially impossible to hit. Generated a 53% whiff rate in that WBC start. So, I mean, he is completely deserving of the hype. But again, our question mark comes around, what are his innings going to really look like? I've got him for a little over 3. I think we could see 4. But I don't know that we're getting him out much more than that. In this morning's game, we did get 5 out of Yamamoto. But we're talking about a little bit more experienced of a pitcher. It's not indicative one way or the other, but my lean would be that we're getting 5 or less. Or we're getting less than 5, I should say. But we might get 4. We might get more than 4. And every additional batter that he faces, he's got the potential to add a strikeout and add some scoring. So, very interesting pitcher. The numbers from last year in the NPB. I did not mean to click on batting. NPB baseball, it's like AAA plus. It's the second best league in the world. 111 innings, 18 starts. Had a 2.35 ERA with a 2.06 xFIP. 1.69 FIP. Struck out 129 hitters in 111 innings, 28.7% Ks, 7.1% walks. Year before, and the year before that, he was actually even filthier. In 15 starts, 91 innings in 2023, he struck out 39.1%, walked 4.9%. You know who that is? That's Spencer Strider, a healthy Spencer Strider. Year before that, similar numbers, 35.3% strikeout, 4.7% walk. That's insane strikeout to walk production. Is he going to come to the majors and do that, or do that right out of the gate? I mean, he does technically have the raw stuff to be able to put up something like that, but it'll probably look a lot more like last year's NPB numbers, 29-ish percent strikeout rate, 7-8% walks. He has lost a few walks in the spring game so far. So something to watch there. But just utterly elite potential. Justin Steele on the other side, we know a little bit better. 3.07 ERA last year in his 24 starts, 134 and 2/3 innings, 24.3% strikeout rate. It's pretty solid strikeout to walk. He's not spectacular in terms of Ks, but he's a very solid pitcher. And again, he's a little bit stretched out. He's made 3 spring starts, and he got up to 20 hitters in his last start. The problem with that was he faced 20 hitters because it was a total meltdown. He gave up 7 earned runs, if I'm remembering correctly. Let me get to it. Yeah. He went 2 innings in the first game, faced just 8 hitters, but struck out 5. Then on the 28th of February, he went 3 innings, faced 11 hitters, struck out 2, gave up 2 earned runs, gave up a homer. On the 11th against Milwaukee, he went 3 2/3, faced 20 hitters, gave up 10 hits, 3 home runs, and 7 earned runs. Struck out 3. Obviously, we're not going to ding a experienced pitcher for a spring start, but not a good one. And definitely a little odd that you'd be in there completely melting down like that. But they just want to get the pitches in. I assume it was just a matter of getting him to a certain pitch count. But the fact that he faced 20 hitters in that game means he threw a fair amount of pitches, and he's reasonable to go into the 5-inning mark. I don't know that I wouldn't expect him to come out for anything beyond a 5th inning. I think that's hard cap for starters. But I think he's got that in him. And again, he is a talented enough pitcher. He's decent at keeping the ball down. 12.3 degree average launch last year. It's not completely, utterly spectacular where it just erases home runs from the board. But you can see he did not allow many home runs last year. 2.16% home run rate last year. Average exit velo is terrific. The hard hit rate was terrific that he allowed. He missed barrels. He didn't allow many barrels at all last season. Similar numbers the year before. Just a 1.96% home run rate. The launch angle was under 10 degrees on average. Just a 5.4% barrel rate. Struck out to walk was pretty similar, 24.6 to 5. Similar numbers as far as the ERA, the xFIP go, the swinging strike rate, the CSW. So year-over-year talent is right there. It's another lefty, so we'll see what happens with the Dodgers. We'll talk about that in a sec. But it's obviously a really challenging lineup for anybody to face. But if you're going to face the Dodgers, you want to do it with no Mookie Betts, potentially no Freddie Freeman, or a banged-up Freddie Freeman. So it's a good enough spot for Justin Steele. 10-8 on DraftKings, entirely playable. Probably do it in the util rather than the captain, but you can make an argument, even with the high salary and the multiplier, to go to the captain role. As far as the bullpens go, I put them on the screen yesterday. A guy that I missed, he was actually, and I'm not saying it's because of them, but he was not on the roster resource page, or he probably was, but he was probably listed as a starter, and I didn't include him in the bullpen. Ben Brown ended up going 2 2/3 in relief yesterday, or this morning. Was not good. He went 2 2/3. He gave up the runs. He gave up 2 earned, 3 total runs, 4 hits. He walked 3. He did strike out 5, but he got a noteworthy piece of bulk relief. And then we saw an inning and a third out of Eli Morgan, who I also didn't have listed. So we had a couple misses with the Cubbies bullpen yesterday. But as I said yesterday, I'm not really into chasing these relief pitcher darts outside of if you're playing like 150 showdown lineups. Then sure, you can do it in some. We got a little bit more stable predictability out of the Dodgers. We got an inning out of Kasparias. Nobody went more than just an inning, which was kind of my read on them yesterday, in the hunt for a multi-inning appearance. Kasparias was my guy that I was thinking maybe we would get like the inning and a third, like what we got out of Eli Morgan on the other side. But instead, we got an inning out of Banda, inning out of Trinian, and then Tanner Scott for the save. I would suspect that you could see Scott work the 9th because they're off, for the foreseeable next handful of days, into next week. So we're not really worried about back-to-back days, especially for a closer. Like, he wouldn't have any problem doing that. I would very much expect to see Kirby Yates. We didn't get him yesterday, so probably see him in the setup spot instead of Trinian. Probably see Vesia. If they do go short leash on Sasaki, then maybe you pick up an inning from like a Robleski, a Jack Dreyer, but I don't know that they push more than an inning on any of these guys unless they really short leash Sasaki or really need to pull him in like the 3rd just because it's not going well. On the Cubs side, we didn't see any of Hodge. Presley, I would definitely be interested in those guys again if you're into the bullpen thing. Presley with the potential on to get the inning if they're looking to book the save. Hodge, decent strikeout rate, but can get ugly around the walks, was very, very good for ratios across his 43 innings last year, though. 31.7% strikeout, 11.6% walk. To come away with a 0.88 whip against an 11.6% walk, yeah, it's only 43 innings, but that's still pretty impressive. Very solid CSW mark for him. Nate Pearson, we also didn't see. A guy who's capable of throwing multiple innings. He would definitely be a candidate for like the Ben Brown role. He was the guy I thought would get that spot yesterday. I don't think we see Ben Brown go multiple innings back-to-back days, so maybe it's Pearson, assuming he's actually in the bullpen. These rosters are a little bit, I don't know when the last time they were updated was. Handful of people here. Appreciate you guys. What's up, Trav? Trav says, am I seeing this correctly? Live rotoscouts baseball show? Yeah, buddy. Guess you weren't here yesterday. We did one of these last night, too. Sneaking it in between NBA games. Good to see you here. Glad you found it. So just to run through the lineups, the big wrinkle yesterday was Freddie Freeman. Had him confirmed in the Dodgers lineup, and then about a half hour before lock this morning, he ended up scratching. He's got a issue with rib soreness, rib pain. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him. Maybe it's what happened to me the last time I had a flight. He was actually coming back from Asia. I've probably told this story before. One of the times back in the day when I was working, I had multiple trips to China to do business, and it was mostly like going to the trade shows, and we were a American company owned by a Chinese guy that manufactured in China for these electronic security things that we were selling. So it was very much like he had much bigger business in China than we were in the States. And it was very much like, look, this guy came from the United States office. And I was just kind of standing in the booth, like the curiosity for people to come, like, poke me in the belly and I'll giggle. But ended up making friends with all the people. They all spoke Mandarin. I speak no Mandarin. They spoke no English or very little English outside of like my boss when he was around. But I would go out for drinks and hang out with the, my coworkers that were around my age in my 20s at that point. One night we go out partying. It's one of the last nights there, or it was my last night there, I think. And we get banged up, really Taiwan on, and just bouncing from place to place. So we go out of one place into another place, and then we go out of that one, hop into a cab, and we're across town, and then we go into this place. And one of those stops, we get out of the cab, and we go up, and it's just like we go up this dark staircase into a dark room. And I'm like, oh, shit, this is weird. This isn't like a bar or a club or anything like that. And I realized, oh, these guys stopped at a construction site because they all are taking a leak. So why don't I take a leak too? And it's just this pitch dark room. And I take one step like to my left so that I'm not peeing on the guy in front of me. I was going to turn and pee out that way. And as I pivoted, I fell into like a 6-foot deep hole because we were up on like a construction site where, the steel goes through the big holes in the floor for multiple floors. So I fell, came down right on my ribs, hit it really hard, like right on the corner of the concrete, and then fell down into the hole. And they had to pull me up out of there. Long story short, the next day I got on a 24-hour flight with a gigantic fat dude on either side of me who really wanted to elbow me right in the ribs with what were probably 2 broken ribs. So that was fun. Maybe that's what happened to Freddie Freeman on his flight to Japan. Anyway, so we'll see what happens with Freddie. I've got him in right now. This will be probably the lineup that we get. We did say Enrique Hernandez, who I mentioned we might get yesterday. We did end up getting him instead of Conforto, despite Conforto's reverse splits numbers last year. They did go with the righty against the lefty. So with the lefty on the mound today, we might see that again. I wouldn't be completely stunned to see Conforto just get that 6th spot, though, in the lineup. But it'll probably be this, assuming Freddie's active. Yesterday, Freddie scratched, so they moved Teoscar into the 3 spot. Will Smith went up to 4. Muncy hit 5th. Then it was Enrique, and then Conforto did end up in the game at that point against the lefty. So don't get me wrong, he did end up playing and starting, but not in the original version of what they wanted to do. So we'll see what happens. Rojas, Pajes at the bottom, probably going to be in there. No Mookie Betts for this one either. Mookie's out. On the Cubs side, it's essentially the exact same lineup. They went with a slightly different order than what I had. They flipped. I had Tucker 2, Suzuki 3. They flipped that. I assume they stick with that. And I had yesterday Swanson 5, Shaw 6. And they flipped that. I assume they stick with that. Otherwise, completely the same. We do have a slightly higher price today on Matt Shaw. He's up to $5,000, $4,500 on the FanDuel slate. Remains an interesting value bet. The way you can click these things together, I'd rather have Matt Shaw than Enrique Hernandez. Hernandez is not bad, but Shaw is downright interesting. A lot of skills displayed getting on base in the minors. We talked about that yesterday. Upper 300s on base percentage throughout basically every stop in the minors with mid-20s power. So a really, really interesting bat for $5,000, $4,500. Makes a lot of things work. He was a little bit popular for that reason, though. He's the path to getting Ohtani with Suzuki or Tucker or something like that if you're looking to load up some stars, or if you're looking to stack up more than 2 of the top 4 Dodgers. He's the path to being able to do that. Other prices, just looking mostly on the DraftKings side right now, look pretty similar around like Suzuki, Tucker, Ohtani, I think he's the exact same 10,000 on both sites. Again, we've got the different configurations across DraftKings and FanDuel. DraftKings, you pay the tax for the captain spot. FanDuel, no multiplier of salary, but 2 multiplier spots as far as the points. Like I talked about yesterday, when I do approach correlation in a showdown lineup, particularly on FanDuel with the dual spots, I always like to think about which guy I want multiplied more. And typically to me, it's the guy, if you're going with like the first and second hitter in the lineup, I would typically want the 2 hitter in the higher multiplier spot because he's the guy that presumably is driving in the other guy and would score more. So I'd rather have the higher score multiplied. You can play a back and forth with that, obviously, around ownership and so on and so forth. But that's how I tend to think about that when I chase correlation in showdown lineups. There's just natural correlation because there's only so many directions you're going to go. So you're going to get a little bit no matter what you do. But builds where you're not directly focused on that are also completely viable, where you're just trying to pick off the higher scores, chase some of the probabilities. But again, we always do have the desire to be up toward the top of the lineup where all the talent is and where all the plate appearances are. And where Shohei Ohtani is. Ohtani this morning started out strong, 2 for 5, struck out once, scored 2 runs. You take it. Had a double. 3 total bases. Dodgers runs were driven in by Edman, Teoscar, Will Smith, and I guess the other was on a sacrifice. Where's the other one? When did that run score? Unimportant. But Ohtani got out to a good start. Edman just 1 for 5 in the 2 spot, but obviously picked up an RBI. He remains an interesting hitter. He's not expensive. He doesn't deserve to have a very high price. But as long as he's getting plate appearances up toward the top with all of these interesting hitters, he's got enough skill at getting on base. Wasn't really on display last year in his 153 plate appearances, but he's been a leadoff hitter in years past. He's got that skill set. He's got a hit tool that's reasonable enough. He's a low strikeout guy, so he can put the ball in play, find his way to first base, and support these guys. Or if Ohtani, with his elite skill to get on base, 390 on base, you put him on first base via a walk. You have him steal second because he stole 59 bases last year. And then all of a sudden, Tommy Edman just needs to loop one into right field and have him, and Ohtani can score from second base. So there's a lot of opportunity for Edman if he's hitting up that way. He's also somewhat matchups proof as a switch hitter, which is always nice. Only 7,200, 6,500, so reasonably priced. Freddie, if he's in there at 92.75, I'd rather have him at the FanDuel price. I'll tell you that. I think he was more expensive. I think he got cheaper, probably for the injury. That's a very fair price to find Freddie. I would hope to have him available. 5-1-3 in the home run model. Obviously, as always, we're looking for 10 there. Nobody gets to 10 on either side. Kyle Tucker is our most highly projected home run mark at 999. Close enough for me. We'll round that one up and call Tucker at 10. But nobody else quite gets there, not even Ohtani. Part of that is credited to Steele's ability to keep the ball down, like I was talking about originally. With Sasaki and his ability to drop the ball off the table with that ludicrous splitter, I would suspect it's going to be very much the same thing, but it's difficult to put numbers on it. But yeah, assuming Freddie's in there, love the spot. This is fantastic. I would think that he'll get kind of popular at that price on FanDuel. Not so much on DraftKings where he's 92. Probably, if anything, I think people would shy away in favor of just more functional prices that are easier to click together. And everybody will remember, Freddie's got hurt ribs. He might not be blah, 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 blah. If he's in the lineup, fire away. So if anything, maybe you grab a little bit on DraftKings if he doesn't come up in public ownership in the morning as much as he might. Teoscar, 33 home runs last year, stole 12 bases, got on base at a 339 clip. Very, very strong season out of Teoscar last year, and comes right back with the ability to replicate it. His on base in years past wasn't as strong. 305 year before last, 316, but it's not like we're completely tragic in that department. He's always been an okay hitter, 258, 267 those 2 years. But he went up across the board. Part of that is just the comfort of hitting while surrounded by elite talent. You're going to see more pitches in a traditional baseball, think of it. So, as I said yesterday, I don't expect him to replicate this necessarily, but something like 255, 260, 320, and I think you could come right back with the power. 500 plus slug, 200 plus ISO, and 30 plus home runs. Nothing not to like about Teoscar. The contact was great last year and was sustainable year over year the last two. 14.9% barrel rate last year, 13.8 the year before. Hard hit went down a little bit, but certainly a non-tragic dip, and it resulted in better output. Man, buckle up for the first A's game of the season whenever that comes along. Just my first opportunity to rant and rave about how much I love Brent Rooker. We were laughing about it at the fantasy draft the other day just because my former extreme dislike of Mr. Rooker and thinking that he was a bad player who was getting lucky a lot completely changed my mind last year. I was talking about it at that draft and the insane, what I thought were impossible improvements for him to make, and he made all of them all in one season. I was talking about it earlier today, too, to finish the conversation from the draft. I was literally texting my friend screenshots of his Fangraphs page. So buckle up for that one in a couple of weeks. Hit the like button if you haven't already. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Just a couple people here hanging out, but I assume more people will watch this overnight like did with last night's show, and that's perfectly fine. But check out rotoscouts.com if you're unfamiliar with us. Everything is under $1 a day, and I don't mean under $1 a day for baseball and then a separate thing for basketball and a separate thing for NHL. I mean all of it. Under $1 a day gets you baseball, basketball, hockey, football, season-long baseball, whatever else lands on the website. You subscribe today, you get through tomorrow morning's baseball game and every hockey and basketball main slate. If you pick up a weekly, it's under $7 to get from here to next Tuesday. Every one of those slates included in between. Pretty strong value, in my opinion. Could be Travis says, I'm actually in Toronto, so I can only play DFS lineups I've reserved. Still always here to listen, support, and drop a like. I appreciate you, buddy. If you're still out there. Really means a lot. Yeah, definitely does help getting those likes, getting the subscriptions, and so on and so forth. So hit those for me if you get a chance. Let's keep on rolling through this, though. Will Smith, presumably coming right back in that 5 spot. Will climb to the cleanup role if Freddie's out like they did yesterday. 7,400 to 8,000 across sites. Like it better on DraftKings. It's kind of the reverse of Freddie Freeman as far as where it's a very comfortable price. Getting Will Smith's bat, he was popular yesterday because it was the same story, and I would expect he's going to be popular at that price again today. But getting that bat, it would be more valuable if we had a multi-game slate where we were playing positions and we had him cheap at catcher. But just being able to book that salary for a very strong bat with a 40.9% hard hit, a 10.8% barrel last year, 185 ISO, took a little bit of a dip in the ISO department, but still came away with 20 home runs. Creator runs 11% better than average. Oh, I'm sorry. He actually went up by ISO. Was it the year before? Yeah, year before I was thinking of. 205 in 2022. So he took a dip to 177 with 19 home runs in 2023 and then came back a little bit actually to the 185 and hit one additional home run last year. This is probably the go-forward version of Will Smith, somewhere in the 185, 190 ISO territory, low to mid-20s home runs. But a very, very strong bat to find again at that price just makes a lot work. And it avoids, if you're going here, like Tommy Edman, Will Smith, rather than trying to force a Teoscar or Freddie and having to play like an Enrique Hernandez or Miguel Rojas, somebody like that, I really like the option of just dipping into like the 7K guys and seeing what you can build with those. There's some very valuable pieces like that on the board. Not that, again, given the it's baseball of it, Miguel Amaya had a decent day, at least to start. What did he end up with? Yeah, 1 for 3, but he had the Cubs ribby. So, I mean, if you had a cheap, completely unowned Miguel Amaya in your lineups yesterday, that was a workable spot. especially if it ends up a low-scoring game. This morning, I keep saying yesterday, it was this morning. This morning it was 4-1. Not a high-scoring game. This one's not crazy high-scoring either. But we're implied for more than that. Dodgers implied for 4.5, basically. Cubbies like 3.7. So you could expect a little bit more scoring. But in a low-scoring game, sometimes just booking that random cheap guy that goes 1 for 3 and drives in the run on a showdown slate can make things work. So everybody in the lineups is in play. It's not to take away those plays that are cheap. It's just, as I was saying, if you can put 2 7K guys together rather than a 9K and a 5K and where you're really forcing it, might make some sense. And you're also just getting more plate appearances out of those guys. Max Muncy, I would so much rather have hitting 5th, even 6th, just buy me one additional lineup spot. But assuming we're coming in the 7 spot, little bit of a downgrade, but the price is right. 7,000 on FanDuel totally works. I feel like FanDuel doesn't really remember how good Max Muncy is. 8,000 on DraftKings, again, very functional over there. Fits more with the 7K Will Smith, Tommy Edman side of it than in going all the way up the ladder in terms of the quality for salary. In just 293 plate appearances last year, 15 home runs, 262 ISO, created runs 35% better than average. This is one of the elite 3 true outcomes hitters in baseball. It was on display last year, 26.3% strikeout rate. That's not even brutal. That's not over 30% like you see from a lot of these types. 15% walk. That's how you get to a 358 on base despite hitting 232. Same deal a year before. With elite power from the left side. Just needs his plate appearances. Year before, 36 home runs, a 263 ISO, and 579 plate appearances. So nothing about the ISO, the power output, changed at all from 2023 to 2024. Nothing about the way that he was striking the ball really changed. Nothing about the way that he was swinging and walking really changed. Did lose a little bit of barrel there. But really the biggest factor for Max Muncy is just the plate appearances. Just needs to be in there. Sees a ton of pitches. Just ridiculous. If you were watching this morning, he's just ridiculous in there. Fouling. He worked, I think, 3 full counts. Just fouling pitches off. Making pitchers work overtime. Making them make the mistake. He's a very good mistake pitch hitter. So love the Muncy spot. And honestly, if shoving him down to the 7 spot in the lineup makes him less popular, it's to our benefit. Miguel Rojas and Andy Pages, just cheap spot fillers. But either one of those guys could absolutely come through. You get a better power mark and a more realistic power bat out of Andy Pages. Between the two, I'd rather have him. But you have a better hit tool, better on-base skills out of Miguel Rojas. He's just a moderate player overall. 337 plate appearances last year, 283, 337, 410. Did create runs 11% better than average. But the guy with the higher individual ceiling on any given slate is probably going to be Pages there. Where Rojas becomes more interesting is, again, on a full slate where his 3-position eligibility with that decent hit tool comes through. And then you start using him as like a wraparound play back to the elite players at the top. On the Cubs side, I'm assuming we just basically come right back with this lineup. It would surprise me if they really did anything else. We did see Justin Turner. As I mentioned, we might see him for one pinch hit, and he did get in there and pinch hit for Michael Busch. Did not come through. He would be the guy that maybe you see him slide into the to the lineup, but I wouldn't expect it coming back against a righty. There's only a couple left-handed hitters in this lineup. Fortunately for them, one of them is Kyle Tucker. We talked about Kyle Tucker yesterday, and I feel like I almost soft-sold him. I didn't get emphatic enough about how ridiculously good Kyle Tucker is. You absolutely want Kyle Tucker in lineups. He's going to be very popular, though. He's a superstar on a showdown slate. Everybody knows it. But 12.7% barrels, 44.3% hard hits, 10.4% and 44.5 the year before last. Low strikeout guy, high walks. This is not a Max Muncy type. Look at this elite strikeout to walk rate over 2 different years. 23 home runs, 11 stolen bases in only 339 plate appearances last year. I said it yesterday, and I'll repeat it. These 339, that half a season, was better than either half of the season when he did this in 2023. And this is a fantastic season. 29 home runs, 30 stolen bases at 233 ISO, 40% better than average for run creation. This half season was also better than this. He just missed some time last year. Don't sleep on Kyle Tucker. And that's more a season-long statement and a just ongoing statement. Do not forget how good he is. His price is going to get, this is a showdown price, but he's going to come into the season pretty high priced. Deservingly so. Ian Happ, successful day at the top. He was on base twice, I think. Yeah, 1 for 3, drew a walk. Did strike out twice. But relatively successful day for the leadoff man. 341 on base last year. Very strong skills at getting on base while maintaining a good quality bat. Stealing the occasional bag. He stole 13 last year. Hit 25 home runs. 199 ISO. He's got a nice amount of pop. Double-digit barrel rate at 11.7% last year. Joins a quartet up at the top of the Cubs lineup, if this is the version of the lineup that we get of guys above an 11% barrel rate last year. 3 out of those 4 guys had better than a 44% hard hit rate last year. A lot of pop in the Cubbies lineup. Tucker is almost certainly a 30 home run guy. Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Michael Busch probably settle in again more into like the mid-20s. But I like Suzuki as a shot to get 23, 25, somewhere in that range. Maybe same for Busch. But 2 guys who are very strong at putting bat on ball. So there's a lot of quality through just stringing together those 4 Cubs hitters. Even though the Cubs are underdogs in this game, facing a potentially elite pitcher, it is a rookie making his MLB debut in a short start. You're going to get appearances for these guys against the Dodgers bullpen. Not that that's necessarily good an inning at a time with the power arms that they've got in the bullpen. But that is a really interesting group of 4 hitters. And then they're followed up, as I said, by Matt Shaw, who is a really interesting rookie for a very cheap price. He's still only $45 on FanDuel. That just makes things work. You put him in a lineup, and you can get to essentially any other combinations that you want. A little bit more expensive on DraftKings than he was yesterday, but still highly affordable. Busch for just $7,000, $6,000 across sites. There's a lot of power there. 192 ISO last year, created runs 19% better than average across 567 plate appearances. The hard hit was under 40%. Don't love that. But as long as it comes with an 11+% barrel rate, we'll get our home run power. It would be nice to get this into the mid-40s, get the ISO up into the 210, 212, and beyond range. I don't know why I said 210, 212. Like those are essentially the same number. 210, 225 would have been more accurate. There are definitely strikeouts at the top of the Cubs lineup as well, though. Several upper 20 strikeout rates, but everybody up there walks. Everybody up there gets on base. I talked about this yesterday. We talked about it in the ongoing sense all last season. Everybody at the top of the Cubs lineup can get on base and create opportunities for this lineup. They just didn't happen to come through. Didn't get too many opportunities against an elite starter and then a couple good innings out of the bullpen yesterday, but whole new game today. And then bottom of the lineup, my favorite hitter down there, as you guys probably can predict, Dansby Swanson. 16 home runs, 19 steals last year in a down season. That's still pretty good output if we're just talking about the counting stats. The contact wasn't bad. The barrels dipped a little bit, 10.9 down to 9.2, but he made up for it with a little bit more hard hit at 42.5%. Strikeouts and walks were around the same. He lost a little bit of walk rate, about 1.2 percentage points of walk rate. That had an impact on the on base. On base dipped down to 312. But he's a better player than this, and he's not completely done. Young 30s. There's still a little bit more in the tank for Dansby. Even if he comes back around this level, though, it's a productive enough player, especially for a showdown slate, especially at these prices. So very, very easy to reach with an appreciable ceiling. 1 for 3 in this morning's game with the lone run scored for the Cubs. I think it was just a single. Cubbies only came away with 3 hits total this morning, so not a lot of meat on the bone to talk about the box score. Not that that's something we ever actually want to do, but when we've only got 1 game into the season, there's only so many things to say. Bottom of the lineup here, we talked about John Birdie and his weird couple of seasons. Still 40-plus bases going 2 years ago, back in 2022. Wasn't particularly good outside of that, just interesting enough for a mixer for DFS, but it's more about a cheap option on a full slate where he's got multi-position. He was only okay in 2023, over 425 plate appearances. The 296, 345 was all right. He created runs 4% better than average, but he only stole 16 bases. He's got no power at all. So you're talking about a guy who just connects for base hits. Maybe in a wraparound if you're just looking for some cheap correlation, back up to the top with if you're going 2 out of these 3 guys and you want another bat to build in, but you can't afford all 3 of them. Consider him an alternate leadoff hitter the second time around. That's fair enough at 46, at 55. He's functional in that role. Miguel Amaya, despite a minor amount of production and being very cheap, not all that appealing. Not much of a hitter. 232, 288, 357, just a 125 ISO, 83 WRC plus. But as we saw this morning, anything can happen, especially at a cheap price. That can make showdown lineups functional. And then Pete Armstrong, assuming he's in the 7 spot again, 58, 55. He's fine. I talked about him yesterday. He had a disappointing season in terms of his offensive output. He's already probably the best defensive center fielder in baseball. But he's got a ways to go at the plate. Just 237, 286, 384 last year. Strikeouts weren't bad at 23.9%, but he didn't walk much. Didn't make great contact. So he's got a long way to go to be a DFS asset. He did steal 27 bases despite getting on at only a 286 clip and despite seeing only 410 plate appearances. But he's not great. He's playable, but he's non-priority. As mentioned, you definitely see an impact on both sides. Nobody over 10 in our home run model. A very good limiter of power and moderate inducer of ground balls in Justin Steele. Kind of an X factor in Roki Sasaki for whatever he's out there for. Potentially 4 elite innings where he just blows these guys away. And should have a limiting impact on power himself. Kyle Tucker is our only guy basically at the magic number in terms of power. Shohei not far behind at 9.77. But then we do have a bit of a dip in terms of getting to our next guy. And the next guys, unlike yesterday, come out of the Cubs side. 7+ for Happ, 7+ for Suzuki. Bush just shy of that mark. And then both Swanson and Shaw halfway there. A little bit further to travel from Shohei to the next respectable home run mark. Teoscar all the way down at 6.06. Muncy at 5.19. This is all just credited to Justin Steele. His ability to miss barrels, his ability to limit hard hits, limit exit velo, keep home runs in the yard, and keep the ball on the ground. All of that is part of the same concept. So we might see another day of limited power output and pretty good pitching. These guys might have to scratch out some walks, string together some base hits, do a little bit of sequencing. A little old school baseball. Lone Wolf, what's going on, buddy? I was tempted to, one of these days, I got to get that howl sound effect. Oh, there it is. Good to see you, pal. You got here just in time for the end of the show. That is another 43 minutes on one game. It's right about where we came down yesterday. Yeah, good to see you. Did you play this morning's slate? Did you watch this morning's game? I was basically loopy by the time that rolled around. And as I said on the basketball show, I've slept about 2 hours since this show yesterday or since waking up yesterday. And we'll probably do the same thing today and then sleep when we're dead. But should be another fun one coming up Wednesday morning. Really cannot wait to see Sasaki. I dropped the link at the top of the chat there. You don't have to scroll through much to get to it. But a really interesting from the 2023 on MLB.com. Just breaking down some of his stuff. I'll end the show this way. Instead of putting a link that nobody will click in there, I'll force you to look at it. So again, all courtesy of MLB.com. This is from March of 2023 after he pitched against Mexico in the World Baseball Classic. But this is some solid StatCast data on Sasaki. The average fastball, 100 miles an hour. The average splitter, 91 and change. Got a wicked slider as well to work with that. But it's all about the fastball splitter combo. This is what I was talking about at the beginning of the show. 29 fastballs total, 26 of them, 90+%, were 100 miles an hour in that appearance. This is just what the dude does. And then you get, this is the list I read off since 2008. These are the guys who have hit that many times in a game. This is the highest percentage of fastballs. And then this is what I was talking about with the run. 13.1 inches of horizontal run, as much as up to 15. And then the limited drop. Just a 10.1 inch drop. Only 3 MLB pitchers in 2022. Again, this is a slightly older article, but they're all relievers, high-end, high-leverage relievers. Felix Bautista, Ryan Helsley, and James Karinchak, who were ridiculous that year, had comparable fastballs in terms of the drop, which, again, when you talk about a rising fastball, you can't fight gravity. There's no spin that you can put on a baseball and have it actually physically rise as it travels the 66 feet to the plate. But the lack of drop that you can create, the limited drop, has that same effect to a hitter's mind. So it's an optical illusion, but it's effective. And when you combine it with this splitter, watch this is the overlay. I think you guys can see that, right? Yeah. Watch the overlay. This is the 102 mile an hour fastball and the 92 mile an hour splitter. Watch him and his form when I hit play on both pitches at the same time. Watch where the release point is, and then watch where the pitches end up. It's just unhittable. From the same release point, one's up here and one's out here. That's 29 inches of vertical drop on the splitter. And a difference of about 10 miles an hour from a fastball that you think is going to dip as it comes in, but it remains above the expected level. So you're swinging below the fastball or way above the splitter, and you can't tell which one's coming until it's too late. Just potentially absolutely absurd. Here's the field vision. Good luck. Look at how those come in on the... Whoops. Just look at the trajectory until the last possible minute. It's insane. So, cannot wait to watch this kid pitch tonight or tomorrow morning. Gonna be fun. Yeah, Lone, typically that would be my approach. I just think that pitchers tend to get very, very pricey, and it limits what you can do. So it's very much like, do you go superstar and get Ohtani into your lineup or into your captain spot or whatever, and then limit yourself to other bats of like an Enrique Hernandez, Andy Pajes stacked from the bottom of the lineup? Or do you want to play more in like the middle with some of the high quality bats from the top? And to me, I typically would chase bats more. But as you know, also I tend to play on FanDuel where there are no pitchers and it doesn't matter. So little give and take there. I went through the bullpen options back at the beginning of the show too, if you're interested in any of those. Again, typically not something I would chase because you're coming away with zeros more often than you're not, let's be honest. Or just limited scoring, even for the money. A lot of the time you're talking about comparable to a cheap hitter and gave you the equivalent of a base hit. Not a lot of slate winners coming out like that. But the starting pitchers, and particularly, again, these two starters, could be very interesting. Sasaki at that price, I question more just because I'm not entirely sure what he's getting pitch count-wise. I think we're going to see like 14, 15 outs. Now, 15 outs would be 5 innings. That's if everything goes perfectly. What I said 14, 15 outs. It's probably better to put it in terms of hitters, like 20-ish hitters, I think would be reasonable. So that's losing a few along the way. Could get to 5 innings in that, but could get chewed up in like 3 and change. This is a 3 and change projection. I have a little bit more faith in, as long as things are going well, Steele and his ability to face 20 hitters, 20 plus hitters. I think if you're getting 5 innings out of one of these guys, it's probably more likely to be Steele. But again, he's the probably less talented of the two pitchers facing the better lineup. So there's that challenge for him. Just depends on what we're juggling. We did see this morning Yamamoto went 5 exactly. And Imanaga came out after 4. So, do with that what you will. I talked about it at the beginning of the show, though. In Steele's most recent start, which was on the 11th, it was largely because of a gigantic meltdown. He went 3 2/3, but more importantly, he ended up facing 20 hitters. But in that, he gave up 3 home runs and 7 earned runs on 10 hits. Struck out 3. So it didn't go well. He faced a lot of hitters because he was giving up a bunch of hits and everything. Some of those presumably came on the first pitch, so the pitch count might not have been like dramatic and as high as it could be, given that output of offense. But the fact that he did face 20 hitters over 3 2/3 gives me that encouragement that we're probably realistic for 5 if things are going well. If he limits them to 2-3 runs, doesn't throw that many pitches, doesn't lose too many walks, and he's a decent strikeout to walk guy. Or he's a decent walk rate anyway, 6.7% last year, 5% the year before, 9.8% 2 years ago, but the last 2 years have been decent. So I think it's a little bit more like probably safer, higher floor, lower ceiling, side to side. Definitely a bigger basement on the Sasaki side. And again, you're dealing with a kid making his first MLB start. I am talking about the showdown slate, yeah. What 3-gamer are you referring to? There's only one game that counts tomorrow. I'm not doing spring. Should have read the banner. Yeah, this is just about the showdown game tomorrow. I only cover the games that count for the most part. There's just too much nonsense for spring baseball, especially with everything going on for NBA. But that'll wind us down, guys. That's 50-plus minutes on one game, and it's just me and Lone Wolf hanging out talking to each other now. So let me punch out. This will be available to everybody overnight and into the morning as you're building your lineups. So any questions, I'll be around. Hit me up in Discord. I'll probably be up in the morning to watch the game again. I'm going to try and sack out for a couple hours tonight, but we'll see how it goes. If you're playing NBA, I will be on top of 10 p.m. updates. We've still got a ways to go, but we'll see what the news looks like. Hopefully things are going well in those early games. And other than that, I wish you good fortune in the morning. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. And we'll be back tomorrow for more basketball. Later.